All right, good evening and welcome to the PTO School Board Candidate Forum for the Glendale-River Hill School District. I am Sheree Purdy and I want to welcome all of you who are online and in person to our forum tonight. So we are going to start out having each candidate given the opportunity to introduce themselves for 3 minutes. And then we will move on to questions from the community. So we will start with Shauna.
Good morning. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Shauna Lucas. I am running to be a school board member here in Glendale-River Hills. I'm a resident of Glendale. I've been a teacher. I've been an educator. I've been an activist. Been a community organizer. I've done a lot of different things, and I bring that experience here to the table. So I worked as a special education teacher in Milwaukee Public Schools, also right here at Glen Hills Middle School, and I've also worked at Nicolay. Currently, I am an instructional coach in Sherwood School District. I work primarily at the middle school, but I also do district work around equity, team building, ICS, integrated comprehensive systems for equity. Right now, I'm finishing up my MPD at Marquette University in public education policy and leadership. And I also have a master's degree in exceptional education. I have worked for Public Allies leadership program. I was an ally. I was also a program manager, so public service is part of my identity. I also have served for the City of Milwaukee Election Commission, where I've served for 17 years, over 45 elections as the chief inspector on the site Lower East Side of Milwaukee. I really am passionate about work around equity, culturally responsive teaching. And I think it's really important right now to be in school boards, because we are at a time in our history where citizens like me, citizens who have been experienced in what we need to change in our school districts, are bringing to the table. We need us to be in the fight and not to be just politicians. So I'm looking forward to talking more about myself tonight and answering your questions as best as I can. So thank you for having me.
All right, Chris.
Good evening. Thanks everyone for being here. When I was an 18-year-old student leader, I decided I was going to go to a school board meeting. And I thought I might want to do that when I grow up. Well, without really planning to, I've kind of spent my life preparing for that. I spent a number of years working in student affairs at the university setting, where I did a lot of policy development, worked on increasing student supports and really enriching the student experience. I did a lot of crisis prevention work, crisis response work, crisis communication work, and really learned how to implement some inclusive processes. So when it was time to hire a staff member, I always asked, who needs to be involved in this? Who is going to be interested in this? Who is going to be working with this individual? So as we look to hire a new superintendent, I hope I can bring that experience to the table. I've also chaired a number of events where we looked at institutional change and involved a number of people in that. I'm currently a special education teacher in a public school. And as a master's degree educator, I saw that my students were not learning reading the way that I wanted them to learn. So I figured out what additional training I needed, and now I'm a certified dyslexia tutor. As a parent, my daughter is currently in college, and Parkway and Glen Hills did such an excellent job preparing her for high school and beyond. And I really want that for all students. As a parent, I enjoyed having volunteer experiences. I got to work with Carla in the Parent Engagement Network, and she really pushed me to implement my idea of service night for families. I recently served on the strategic planning committee, and so I got a much better idea of the current issues facing our school district. And then since planning to run, I have tried to do a deep dive into budgeting. And have attended a seminar, reading books, and signed up for a course, those kinds of things, because I really want to be ready to go and be of good service. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I turn it over to Katie.
Okay, my turn. So I've been attending the school board meetings, just, I guess, for fun. I don't know if that's really the right word for it. Since my son, who is now a senior at Nicolay, since he was in 6th grade. And that was the same year that we both were on the parent engagement network together with Carla. And after one of those parent engagement network meetings, we just kind of stumbled into a board meeting and I just kept going. I've always like appreciated the information I got, and that was straight. This is really straight from the source. And so when people would ask questions online or try to like stir up drama and act like it was a conspiracy, it was like, no, here's what was actually said. Here's what is actually going on to the best of my knowledge as a member of the public. And I could just kind of straighten that out. And I really liked having that knowledge. And as it's carried on, I've just gotten more enmeshed. So then I just so
I wonder if it's too close to the regulation.
okay. All right. Now it's so all right. Last year. Work makes the drink work. Okay, so. Okay, I'll just talk loud. So then, last year I had the opportunity to join the equity committee, which is a ad hoc committee from the school board, and that work has been really meaningful to me. I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot in there, and I feel like we've done a lot of good work. We built the equity lens and the equity non-negotiables that the school board is using. I also, with Chris, did the strategic planning committee, and that was also an intense learning experience over a few days. When I found out that Andy and Ben were gonna run this year, I felt like the board needed someone with the historical knowledge. I've been, like, Danielle will be the senior member of the board, and I've been attending longer than she's been on the board. So I feel like I have some knowledge there. This will be our 4th superintendent since I've been attending, so I have that sort of to bring to the table and maybe help prevent some mistakes from being made, maybe help like good work that's been done, not to get lost. And so I decided it was really important that I actually run this time. After, like, I spent a lot of years saying I will never ever run, but I decided it was time. That's me in a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Katie. Hi. Now I'm a little nervous. Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Cronwell. I am a current board member. I joined the board in late May of this past year and sat my first meeting in June. And I'm here because I am passionate, not just about public education, but about kids. And that is the only reason I showed up when we needed to fill a vacancy on the board last spring. I showed up because having 3 seats up for re-election is very vulnerable on a 5-seat board. And in this time, in this climate, we need to really work hard as a community to be invested in our schools so that our school values and the values of how we invest in our education reflect the community values that we all have. And it's really easy, right, to kind of forget how local politics are really the place where we have those powerful input, because our vote matters the most locally. So I showed up and I was quite surprised. In fact, the first round of votes, Carla came out and she was like, okay, you guys, like, some of you are gonna go. I picked up my purse. Like, I was like, okay, I'll come back later, no problem, thanks for your time. Instead, I've been privileged to sit at the table. It's a table that's populated by really invested people who have put time and sweat equity and emotional investment into this district, and I'm proud to sit there with them. I'm proud to be part of an environment where our teachers are highly valued, and our administration is working hard, striving to keep a tone positive and grounded at a time when things are complicated, right? We were very surprised in October. We were very surprised in January. What we need to do is continue to focus on our kids, put our kids central. If we keep our kids central, our decision-making is going to be much simpler because everything that comes out of that central child value system is going to lead toward quality education. I love being a pediatric OT. I've been a pediatric OT for over 20 years, most of that time in MPS, almost all of it in public schools. Public schools are the backbone of our communities. They are the way we guarantee equity and accessible education. They are the doorway through which people can better themselves and improve the community. And I really believe that we need to flourish in our public education environment. And it's complicated in Wisconsin. We have not been empowered at the state level to do that. So school board advocacy is local and it's state. There we go. Great. Thank you all. Next, we are going to move into the question portion of our meeting. So we've been gathering questions from the community for a little while. And what we'll do is we will rotate who starts each question. Chris, you will start answering the first question and I will share that now. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. So, Chris, what approach do you think the school board should take regarding the school district budget?
I think the approach needs to be inclusive and transparent. And I think the board has been doing a really good job at that with all the information that's publicly available. I think they're asking wonderful questions, bringing in wonderful resources. So I support all of, what has been done. I think it's important to get ideas from all sectors. And we need to work with cost cutting and also looking at what's central, what's essential. And a huge part of that is, what are we doing to minimize any disruption to our kids? What are we doing to continue to retain quality educators? And I know it's a scary time for people. And people are wondering, we have jobs, will this all work out okay? And I'm really assured by the people that are on the board now, by the people that they brought in, and the knowledge that this is our district. And we have also done amazing things. When we wanted to, a playground where all of our kids could play together, people rallied in the community to make it happen. And I have no doubt that's going to happen again. We need to look at ways of increasing revenue, of decreasing expenses. Part of that, I would look to see, are there partnerships that we can get into that would help us minimize costs. Look at short-term borrowing. Like most of the school districts in Wisconsin, we'll probably need to do a referendum. But we need to work together and make sure that we share information and expertise and try to minimize the disruption to students.
Thank you. Katie, what approach do you think the school board should take regarding the school district budget?
Let's see if this works better this time. I do believe that they're on the right path now as they're doing things. They've brought in experts who are vetted by outside sources, not just by themselves. And experts who have been through similar situations before. So I do think that leaning on the experts is really good. I also appreciated that at the committee of the whole meeting earlier this week, they've brought up that they're not getting the information that they'd really like from the experts. And so I think that really needs to be something that they continue to demand. The board needs all of the information. Now that's yeah. So the board needs to continue to demand the information so that they can share everything possible with the public. The public needs to know what's going on. And they need to be involved as much as they can, or, I mean, really choose to be. It's definitely a comfort level thing. But I do agree with Chris that looking for partnerships within the community would be a really good place to start. Maybe some of the things that we feel like we can't afford, maybe there's a family that would be willing to help with that. Or, you know, something like that. I know a lot of building things were brought up when we were looking towards that type of referendum. And now I can't forget about all of these building needs, they're just floating around in my head, but I can't help but wonder if some of those could be addressed by members of the community. Like there was easy things, like putting no skid tape on the stairs, like a couple handy people could come and do that in a weekend, you know, and it wouldn't probably cost as much of anything. So that's where my mind goes with budget, is just making sure we're transparent, making sure we're listening to the experts, but also exploring as many creative options as possible so that we have to make as few cuts as possible and still serve everybody as best we can.
All right, what approach do you think the school board should take regarding the school district budget? Well, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. No joke, just to be truly transparent, I don't think there's a board member who hasn't lost sleep over this, right? We're working really closely with district leadership and staff to understand their recommendations. Those recommendations are going to be driven by the people who do that work daily, who understand the intricacies and the interwoven nature of education. Because we can say we don't want it to touch kids and then accidentally do something that has a really profound impact on our kids. And we don't want that. We're working really hard to use that equity lens and the non-negotiables that we've worked hard to instill, because we don't want unintended consequences after a point where it's hard to come back, right? Our staff are one of our most valuable assets. When those changes happen, there's a lot of impact that occurs, and it occurs within relationships and the students and the staff and all of that network. It's really enmeshed, and we recognize that and we value that. So really focusing on the expert internal people and their recommendations for our decisions is going to be key. I also want to be clear that when we talk about cuts, we always think about people. We're also thinking about processes and things. So it's not, it's a very, very robust consideration. Again, trying to keep it away from kids. We are accessing expert analysis. We're considering the recommendations. We know that long-term borrowing is something that they're probably recommending. We know, again, operational referendum. We're in one right now, but it's ending soon. We also do need to consider alternate revenues, and we do have a building in the district that I think we need to learn more about the potential sale of, which is complicated and it's emotional, but it's really necessary for consideration. There we go. John, what approach do you think the school board should take regarding the school district budget? That was me, sorry.
Okay, so I think, this budget thing has been big news. It's been, something that's been on a lot of people's minds, but I think it is, it's manageable. I think, what we know as school and district leaders is that you can't control how much state allocates to funding. You can't control enrollment trends. You can't control rising costs of insurance or energy or curriculum resources or personnel costs. You can't control those things, but you can control the decisions you make around all of those things, and with enough knowledge and understanding, asking the right questions, being transparent, talking to all stakeholders about the priorities for spending. That's just a start, but also understanding what each school needs, understanding what each school gets and how they use those resources. Prioritizing some of the most important changes first, understanding what the strategy should be for each individual school, So it's not just about changing schools though, it's about changing the entire district and taking a holistic approach to that. So I think what's gonna have to happen is that some broad goals are gonna have to be established. I think, if I understand it correctly, this will be the fourth operating referendum that could potentially be passed in Glendale-River Hills. And that's just one part of it, the funding, but then what do we do to gain the public's trust that we know what to do when that funding comes through and we can make sure that the students benefit from it the most.
Thank you. So we will move on to our second question, and Katie will be the first to answer this one. When considering new candidates for superintendent, what qualities do you believe are most important?
Ideally, I want someone that ties to our community. I don't want someone who's coming here as a check mark on their resume. Maybe they've taught here before, maybe they live here, maybe they at least live in the North Shore. It's that, I realize it's like kind of pie in the sky and probably not that realistic, but I would really like that. Beyond that, I need them to be very equity minded. They need to understand that our district is very unique. We aren't just racially diverse, we are financially diverse, we have all of the major world religions, we have a lot of diversity, that's a lot to wrap your head around and to really handle appropriately. So I think that needs to be really high on the list. Also, they need to be willing to work with the board. They cannot be fighting the board, they can't be deciding that they know better than the board. The superintendent position is basically middle management, with the board being kind of CEOs. And so they need to understand that that is their role. They're not leading the show. But they need to lead the people beneath them, but in a way that is guided by the board and in collaboration with the board. I guess those are the big ones. Experience would also be helpful. I would like to have maybe, if not done exactly the superintendent job before, something close. And with a real knowledge of what that job entails, and with a real comfort level of doing work that is uncomfortable on all levels.
Thank you. Karen, when considering new candidates for superintendent, what qualities do you believe are most important?
So strong communication skills are really key because a superintendent needs to communicate in all directions with anyone who walks in the door. And while it's certainly true that the school board is kind of where the buck stops, the truth is the superintendent is the primary educational expert in the district, and they lead all of the implementation and design of implementation of the educational materials with their administrative team. They're the experts. Like the school board, we're not educators by trade usually, right? It's really key that, as Katie mentioned, they are able to deal with conflict and handle it comfortably, be able to accept differentiated opinions and be able to navigate uncomfortable scenarios. Along that line, it's true 85% of school districts in this state have had to go to operating referendum. It's the norm these days because the state funding model doesn't provide sufficient funds to be able to support public education, which means that a new superintendent needs to be able to navigate coming into that kind of climate. And I would agree, I would hope that they're not brand new, but truly, I just want the best possible candidate that fits our district. It is diverse. We need somebody who's able to answer to a variety We are a highly collaborative board. We want to be seen as a partnership. And there is a history of not recently, but there's a history of difficulty in the relationship between the board and the administration. We want it to be collaborative, but it's not going to be rubber stamped. There's not one person on the board or probably at this forum who's interested in rubber stamping things. We want to be able to ask questions. And when we ask questions, we want people to understand that we're coming together in an opportunity to explore. I'm perfectly fine if you say, I'm not sure, but let me find out. I would rather you tell me that than come up with something off the cuff. But please never walk away from an opportunity to interact, feeling as though I've judged the fact you don't have the answer.
Thank you, Karen. Shauna. When considering new candidates for superintendent, what qualities do you believe are most important?
So, in the district I work in currently, our superintendent has been on the job for about maybe 6 months now. And, I was a part of the committee to hire the superintendent there. And, it's interesting, when you have a set of questions in front of you and you receive, a certain answer from a superintendent, you just still don't quite know what things will be like on the job. Being a superintendent is really an on-the-job training opportunity for a leader. And, but we do want them to possess some skills. We want their core values to match the wants of this district. We want them to believe that we can instill equitable best practices. We want them to believe that educating the whole child is important. We want them to have a sense of what change management is like and how to get everyone through that. We want them to understand what shared leadership is about, because we can't have anyone just grounded in ego and wanting to have harness all of the power and make all of the decisions, because that causes conflict. So there are some really talented and intelligent people who have historical knowledge, people who have skills that with the right leader, they're able to foster all of the people's talents that can help us move through change. So I think that that's an important thing for us. We need someone who's going to be ethical. It would help to understand financial management. And the most important thing, though, I think, is for superintendent to be student focused, because I think that that really matches the values of what this community is about.
Thank you. Chris, when considering new candidates for superintendent, what qualities do you believe are most important?
I love this question, and I also hope that we ask a lot of other people this question too. You know, our educators, you know, our parents, our community members, people at Nicolay, our partner districts. I'd really love to see a broad response to this question. I think we need somebody who inspires confidence. Right now, we've got some bad press. If we're looking to get short-term loans, our reputation matters. And so we need someone who can inspire confidence right away. We need someone with a collaborative style. There are a lot of things going well and going right. And I wouldn't be looking for somebody who's coming in to kind of start from scratch, but I want someone who listens as much as they talk and takes the time to really understand what's working well as what's not working and needs to be fixed. We need someone who's committed to equity. And yes, we do need someone with financial skills. Someone who, if the business manager is not there, can pick up a sheet, explain it, defend it, answer questions about it. We need someone with strong communication skills who can talk well to a variety of constituencies. Someone who's visible, not just to the grown-ups, but to the kids too. And I'd really like someone who has experience as an educator. I used to think I understood what it was like to be an educator until I was an educator. And I think it's way easier to provide leadership to a staff of educators if you have that experience.
Thank you. So this will probably be our last question before we turn the time over to each candidate to briefly offer a closing statement. So, Karen, what would your top priorities be for the school board over the next 3 years?
I learned I needed to do my talking points and then go back and fill them in. So, first, we center our work through our strategic plan. We had a lot of invested community members and staff who participated in that, and that's really key to all of our decision making. My immediate focus is financially stabilizing the district and protecting student learning. We also want to continue to develop excellence in education, improve to our residents and our public education system is dynamic, exceptional, and really offers a ton of unique learning opportunities, because we want them to know that their kids will thrive here. And this is where they belong. We also want them to continue working on capital improvements, exploring what it is that our buildings need. It's really key. I was flabbergasted in some of the meetings last year to discover that things like doorknobs, which are crazy expensive, are barriers to our kids being able to access our buildings. That we don't have bathrooms that are accessible for all of our students. These are things that should have been addressed in the past, but we can't go back. So we need to address them in the future. And I think that there are some things we'll be able to do. And there are ways to explore how we step that process. When it comes to this district, I'm just deeply invested in this. I mean, I've attended 2 different conferences. I've been participating in continuing ed. I've been streaming all kinds of continuing ed off of the Wisconsin School Board Association, largely to be able to address the systems that we need to address with these 3 things largely in my mind. How do we move forward? How do we do it well? And how do we do it with well-considered action that's timed to meet our students, staff, and kids?
Thank you, Patty. Shannon, what would your top priorities be for the school board over the next 3 years?
Well, of course, I feel like my first priority needs to be student achievement. So, looking at the forward data for this year, there's an obvious achievement gap between certain groups of students, and that's something that can be improved. It's proven that it can be done, and I think it can absolutely be done here. There are amazing teachers here, and there are some things that can be done to improve student achievement. Of course, managing resources has to be a priority. We all talked about that here, but that's a priority. So increase fiscal achievement through transparency, collaboration with the community, making sure that the referendum is, let's see, how can I say this? There's public relations that are positive, and that we communicate with the community about why this is very important. And almost a rebranding process is going to be important. That comes from the work of all of us. And then deepening the district's understanding of equity. So there's a sense of urgency that I feel myself around applying an equity lens. And I live in a neighborhood where a lot of my former students that have taught here live in, and I see them a lot, and I see the impact that education has for the trajectory of a lot of our students. So I understand the importance of that. So I think that cultural responsive teaching is important, developing our equity lens and supporting our staff to do all of those things. My priority.
Thank you, Sean. Chris, what would your top priorities be for the school board over the next 3 years?
Again, say financial stability, because that lets us do other things. And we need to get to a place where we can start meeting our goals for what our buildings look like and who they serve better. Where staff don't have to worry about jobs or cost of living, that kind of thing. We need to ensure that students continue to receive services despite our budget challenges, and continue to get an excellent education while we close the opportunity gaps. We just worked on a strategic plan, and I feel really proud of it, and we need to not lose focus of it. We need to not put it on a shelf, let it get dusty. We need to really implement that and figure out what we can still do right away. And then finally, really helping our new superintendent get onboarded, make sure that they're meeting the right people in the community, that they are empowered to lead while working really well with the board.
Thank you, Chris. Katie, what would your top priorities be for the school board over the next 3 years?
Okay, I think the #1 priority is getting the community attention. They pay attention in moments of crisis, but then they are coming to point fingers. And the fingers get pointed in the wrong places because they don't know what actually happened. So somehow I feel like the community needs to be educated about how things are working, what is going on. And I know that's a big ask because people don't pay attention at the school boards. I mean, there's 4 of us running in some districts where they are paying attention and they're getting really angry. There's more than, they had to have a primary because so many people are trying to run. This is actually a big group, but there's 3 spots open, so not so much. So that's where I think we need to be. I think in order to get a referendum to pass, we're gonna have to pull the community in and get them to understand what happened, why it happened, why we will make sure it won't happen again. Also that a lot of it is pretty normal for how schools work in Wisconsin. It's just that the board was caught by surprise. It wasn't that districts don't have this problem, that they don't need to run referendums. That's just a fact of life in Wisconsin at this point. But what doesn't need to be a fact of life is that the board gets blindsided by it at the absolute last moment, and then further blindsided by it months later when an outside expert happens to look at things a different way. So we need to ensure that the public understands that no mistakes were made, they won't be made again. Build that collaborative relationship between the board and then whoever the new administration ends up being, whoever the new business manager ends up being. Like, it's really communication across the board needs to be the priority.
Thank you all for answering those questions. Now we will turn the time over to each candidate for a 2 minutes time to talk about whatever you'd like to. So let's start with Shauna. Start with you.
And once again, thank you. I'm really pleased to be here, and I think everyone turned out to hear what we have to say. When I told my family and my friends, my former colleagues that I was running for this seat, they thought I was crazy. You know, not only because I, work full time and work in classes full time, but there's some major things happening in this district right now. But that's really the reason why I'm here. I think that it's important to not be afraid of the challenges ahead of us. I think that we have to really dig in and dig deep and work together and understand what the challenge is. And I think that it's really important for us to understand that this is a systems thing. There's a book by Stevenson who's writing right now about Abraham Lincoln. And he talked about how the way he was able to rally support for the cause was by not blaming individuals for what was the terrible institution of slavery. He blamed the system, that this was a system that was allowing something like this to happen. So, and he rallied a coalition. They all made it happen. They through a war, of course, but they weren't afraid to move forward through the challenges. So I think it's important for us to learn about how it's going to take a system. It's going to take a collective effort to make it through this challenge.
Thank you, John. Great, the floor is yours.
I'm passionate about this district. It's one of the reasons we moved where we moved. And I want to work to help everyone to have a great experience in this district. And I'm talking about students and the people that work here. I want these to be considered the best places to work. And I want to close the opportunity gap and have people on the street talk about what a wonderful place this is. I am a lifetime learner, and I will work relentlessly to learn what I need to learn in order to be a good servant leader. I believe that individuals make a difference, but working together collectively and collaboratively is how we are really going to push this from good to great. Thank you.
Katie, the floor is yours.
I have to say, like, I came into this evening tonight, looking to hear what everybody had to say. And I liked what everybody has to say. I don't think there's a bad combination of three people up here. And I think we'll all work well with Danielle and Carlo, this will be on the board. I do, like I said, I think we need to work on making sure the community understands what's going on. And I don't think that's necessarily the fault of the board, but I feel like there's work the board can do to make that happen. I have a 6th and a 7th grader, so I do still have children in this district and I will for not my full term, but most of it. And I do have a senior at Nicolay. I'm very not necessarily, I mean, I'm involved with the community, but I don't do a lot of, you don't see me. But I do a lot of behind the scenes work, and that's where my heart is. My heart is in this community, my heart is in these school buildings, and it has been since I landed here completely by accident, more or less. I've lived here for almost 18 years now. And I can't imagine living anywhere else. I'm glad that my kids went through these schools. I didn't research the schools before I came here. I had my son when I was 22. That wasn't a thing I thought about. But they have been amazing schools and I want to keep them amazing and I want them to be even better for all of the families who live here.
Thank you, Katie. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we're all really, when we're here, when you're sitting up at this table, it's because you're passionate. And it sounds like we're all passionate about kids and public education. And that is a gift. Like for the competition to be largely in favor of the same things is really key. I have, like, there's a lot of talk about agendas generally. Like when you hear people talk about agendas, I have no agenda. My agenda is the kids. It's the quality of the schools. That's it, full stop. I'm coming in here to really look at all of our students, all of their needs, and how do we meet those needs from an educational perspective that's holistic, that looks at every child and every aspect of their needs. We want to make sure that we're advocating not just at the state level, because we do need to do that, and we need passionate people pushing for change, which is complicated. But also locally, we need to be able, I would agree, to get our community more invested to come in. I was the Fall Festival coordinator for a couple of years, and y'all, I made a sign and closed some of the most popular activities because we didn't have enough volunteers. But it got people to come to my table and pick a few things up. Yeah, I was that person. You know, I was a Girl Scout leader for 9 years. When we left the district, it was because I was working for MPS and I had to live in Milwaukee. When we moved back to the district, we came back to Glendale on purpose. It's diverse, it's robust, it represents the world in this amazing microcosm that we wanted our kids to experience. But also, I was invested in the city. We walked in the door and I was invited to be on the plan commission. I didn't feel like I was quite ready, but I did serve on the plan commission for several years. And once I got my feet wet in the city level, I realized I really wanted to come back to the educational environment, which is how I got here. And I'm thrilled to be here. And, you know, I plan to stay, so y'all need to vote.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you for the people in the audience and online. Please feel free to reach out to any of the candidates. The PTO will post on Facebook and send out an email to all of our people who subscribe to our email newsletters with your contact information that you'd like to share. If you have any questions, to reach out to them. And thank you again. If you are interested in becoming more involved in the schools, but not interested in running for school board, the PTO and the foundation can both use your help and time. So thank you all again for coming, and please enjoy the rest of your night.